Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like you lost something, even though they never raised their voice, never called you a name, never said anything obviously cruel? Just a quiet twist in your stomach. A feeling like you've been knocked off balance, and you can't explain why. That's the calmness of a manipulator. And in this story, you'll find out why they always seem so composed while you're left second-guessing your own feelings. Tonight's video isn't about blaming, it's about clarity. You'll learn the emotional patterns that manipulators use, not the big dramatic moves, but the small, quiet ones. The ways they stay calm, and the subtle ways they make you feel like you're the unstable one. This isn't a lecture. It's a gentle unfolding of something you've probably felt, but never had words for. And if it brings you peace or understanding, subscribe to Mr Narratory for more calm stories about the human mind. In the comments tonight, tell me this. What's something you used to blame yourself for, but now you see more clearly? Think about that as we begin. Because most manipulation doesn't look like control, it looks like silence. It looks like someone sitting across from you with a still face while your insides burn with confusion. And the more upset you become, the calmer they stay. That calm is not wisdom, it's power. A power based on one thing, knowing that if they don't react, you will. That if they seem unmoved, you'll start to question your own emotions. Over time, this creates a quiet imbalance where the more emotional you get, the more reasonable they seem by contrast. It's not accidental. Many manipulators, whether they're aware of it or not, use stillness as a strategy. They don't interrupt. They don't argue. They let you collapse under the weight of your own intensity. And then, when you apologize for overreacting, they become the calm one again. Not because they want peace, but because they want control. In their mind, calmness equals credibility. If they can appear steady, they win. And so, they teach you slowly that being emotional means being wrong, that crying means weakness, that passion equals instability, and you begin to shrink, you begin to censor yourself, to second-guess even the purest feelings. Because next to their silence, your honesty feels too loud. But here's the truth. Real calm doesn't make others feel small. Real calm is spacious. It lets people breathe. The manipulator's calm, it's narrow, cold, designed to leave you fumbling in your own mind while they sit perfectly still. And it works not because they're stronger, but because no one ever taught you that feeling deeply isn't a flaw. It's strength. And it's time you remember that. So stay with me. In part 2, we'll look at the exact ways they maintain this false calm and how to recognize the shift, the moment when silence stops being peace and becomes control. There's a moment. And if you've been through this, you'll know it when you raise a concern, speak from the heart, and the other person just pauses. Doesn't interrupt, doesn't argue. They tilt their head, maybe smile faintly, their breathing stays calm, and you think for a split second, am I wrong? That's not empathy, that's management. The manipulator's stillness is designed consciously or unconsciously to make you feel like your emotional truth is unstable. And it starts early in the dynamic, often with phrases like, you're being sensitive, or I don't remember it that way, or worse, why are you always like this when we talk? These aren't attacks, they're frames. The manipulator is not denying what happened. They're denying how it felt to you, and they do it quietly. Because the quieter they are, the louder your uncertainty grows. This is the mechanic of stillness, not to dominate with volume, but to redirect with silence. One of the most common techniques is selective withdrawal. They stay calm because they've trained themselves to disengage the moment your feelings become too much. And by too much, they mean real. The second your tone rises even slightly, they stop responding. They look away. They say things like, "Let me know when you're ready to talk like an adult." And just like that, your honest reaction is reframed as immaturity. Their calmness becomes the gold standard. Your emotion becomes evidence of a flaw. And because they aren't doing anything, no shouting, no threats, it's nearly impossible to call it out without sounding like you're exaggerating. But the damage is subtle and lasting. You begin to fear your own feelings. You rehearse your words before speaking. You try to sound balanced, controlled, emotionally tidy. Not for your truth, but for their approval. That's when the control is complete. They don't need to yell. They don't need to argue. They just need you to believe that emotional discomfort equals personal failure. And over time, you learn to silence yourself. The manipulator's calm is not about patience. It's about pressure. The kind that makes you feel like you are the storm and they are the shore. But real calm doesn't punish. It listens. It stays present without judgment. It holds space without demanding that you shrink. So ask yourself, when someone stays calm while you unravel, are they comforting you or are they letting you drown slowly in your own doubt? That's what we're learning to see. That's what clarity looks like, not anger, not revenge, just noticing. In part 3, I'll show you how this calm control develops over time. The small signs, the little sacrifices you made without realizing it, and how your truth got quieter each day until you forgot what it sounded like. It never starts with silence. Not at first. It starts with attention, with warmth, with someone who seems endlessly composed, mature, unbothered, the kind of calm that makes you want to match them. And so you do. You slow your tone. You choose your words more carefully. You speak with softness, because being near their stillness makes you want to be better. At first, it feels good, like safety. But slowly, quietly, the line between your truth and their comfort begins to blur. The first time you express frustration, they raise an eyebrow, not in anger, but in distance. They might say, "I didn't expect that from you," or, "Wow, that's dramatic." Just enough to make you pause, just enough to make you wonder if you've misstepped. So next time, you adjust. You trim the feeling down. You retell the story in a neater way, and they nod. Approve, reward. That's how it begins, not with punishment, but with calibration. Their calm becomes the temperature you're trying to match. And with each adjustment, you lose a degree of your own emotional truth. Over weeks, months, sometimes years, your responses shrink. You begin to ask yourself, will this sound reasonable? Instead of, is this true? And in doing so, you create a version of yourself that fits inside their comfort. The manipulator doesn't force this. That's what makes it so hard to see. You do it to yourself not because you're weak, but because you want peace. But peace built on suppression isn't peace, it's containment. And eventually, you start to notice the cost. You avoid topics. You downplay feelings. You choose silence, not because you're healed, but because speaking no longer feels safe. And yet, they remain calm, always calm, while you feel the quiet erosion of who you used to be. The scariest part isn't the conflict, it's the lack of it. Because Nothing seems wrong, but nothing feels right anymore. That's what long-term manipulation through calm does. It doesn't destroy you, it erases you, softly, like fog, like dust, gathering over something beautiful until it fades from view. One day, you look in the mirror and realize you haven't raised your voice in years. You haven't cried in front of them in forever. Not because you're stronger, but because you've stopped bringing your full self into the room, and they like you better this way. You're easier now, quieter, controlled. But the truth is, you're not okay. You're just afraid of disturbing their stillness. In part 4, we'll talk about how to feel again, how to recognize the difference between your true peace and the false calm you were taught to accept. You don't have to become loud. You just have to become real again. It doesn't happen in one grand moment. You don't wake up and shout. You don't slam doors or write long letters. No, the first time you feel again after being slowly erased, it's quiet. It's subtle. Like warmth returning to a limb that's been numb. There's a tingle, a flicker, a sudden awareness of something that was missing. It might come in the middle of a conversation, something small, like being interrupted, something you've learned to brush off. But this time, your body doesn't let it go. There's a pause, a tightening in your chest, a voice, barely audible, that whispers, "That didn't feel right." And for a moment, you listen. You don't act on it. You don't say anything, but you notice it. And that noticing is everything, because it means something in you is waking up. Not to fight, not to prove, just to exist again. The manipulator, still calm, might not even see the shift, but you feel it. And it makes the room feel different. You suddenly see the patterns, not all of them, just enough. Enough to realize that your silence hasn't been peace, it's been survival. And that realization is not loud, it's not rage, it's relief. Not because the pain is over, but because now it has a name. One evening, you speak slightly differently. You don't smile as quickly. You don't explain yourself 3 times. You say no gently, but without apology. And the manipulator notices. Their calm breaks just for a second. A flicker of frustration, a shift in tone. That's when you know it was never calm. It was controlled. And now you've disturbed it, not with violence, not with anger, with truth. And truth, when it finally returns to your voice, doesn't need volume. It just needs space. You start creating that space slowly. You take longer pauses before you answer. You ask yourself, do I really agree? Instead of, how can I keep the peace? And it feels strange, unfamiliar, like you're speaking a language you used to know. But with each small choice, you become more solid, more here. And that threatens everything they've built. Because your calm, the real kind, doesn't give them power. It gives you freedom. In part 5, we'll talk about what happens when they realize they're losing their grip, how calm control often turns into subtle chaos, and how you can stay steady, not like they did, to dominate but with truth, to reclaim. They feel it before they admit it, the shift. The subtle way you no longer lean forward when they speak, the way your eyes stop searching for their approval, the absence of that small, habitual apology at the end of your sentences. You've changed not loudly, but entirely. And for the manipulator, that silence is terrifying, because they built everything on your uncertainty, your softness, your willingness to bend. And now, you're still. but not their kind of still, yours. It's not cold or punishing. It's just rooted. Calm in a way that doesn't beg to be validated. That kind of presence unnerves them. They test it. They might become softer, try kindness. Then, sharper, try subtle guilt. They bring up old memories, try to remind you of the version of yourself that used to yield. They'll say things like, "You used to be so understanding," or "I miss the way you used to talk to me." But it won't work anymore, because the version of you they're talking to no longer needs to be understood by them, and that's the end of their control. Not when you yell, not when you prove anything, but when you don't need their calm to feel your own. That's what breaks the cycle. You begin to see their stillness not as strength, but as defense. An armor built to avoid truth. And now, you're not afraid of truth anymore. You've sat with your feelings, listened to your instincts, reclaimed your inner voice, and in that quiet strength, you realize something important. You don't have to explain your clarity to anyone. You don't have to defend your boundaries. You don't even have to be understood. You only have to be true. And truth, real truth, is calm. It doesn't shake. It doesn't shrink. It just is. One day, they'll sit across from you and say nothing, just like always. But this time, the silence won't be heavy. It won't control you. It will free you. Because now, you know the difference between being silenced and being still. And you choose stillness, not to protect them, not to prove a point, but to come home to yourself. That's what healing sounds like. It doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be real. So, if you're lying awake tonight, wondering if you're too emotional, too much, too soft, let me tell you, you're not. You were just surrounded by people who mistook your depth for weakness, but it was never weakness. It was you trying to love out loud in a world that demanded quiet. Keep that love. Just give it back to yourself first. The night is quiet now, but this time, the silence belongs to you.